Training doodads usually don't move the needle a lot as it comes to handgun training. Most people who claim they do are usually trying to sell them, and the reality is that laser cartridges and gyros only go so far in practicing a very specific slice of handgun shooting and what it actually represents. What if you spent all that money and got a fancy VR shooting rig? What could you accomplish then? Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel. I'm David, and today I am a sweaty gamer, and this is a gaming channel because we are talking about the Ace MetaQuest 3, or I guess it's MetaQuest 2 as well, training game called Ace. And Ace is a VR shooting simulator which is initially positioned at the practical shooting crowd. So if you are a fan of hit factor type games, this game is definitely for you. Before we dive a lot deeper, I've got two things. First is the dad joke. What's the difference between snowmen and snowwomen? Snowballs. I feel like that's just irreverent and not edgy, but it is 2024. I don't know what the rules are yet. And the other thing is we are all setting New Year's resolutions right now, whether it to be get better at shooting or to lose weight or whatever it could be. I want to recommend to you a book to read or listen to if you're one of those guys. I'll put a link in the description on Audible called Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is a book I read at the beginning of last year, and it helps you understand how you need to be attacking these things that you say are goals and how you marry effort to them and develop the discipline to where they just become part of who you are, because really we are a sum of all of our habits, so you might as well get some good ones. So it seems like, especially around Thanksgiving, weird that's the biggest retail holiday, but everybody is selling training doodads that's going to save you money on ammo. So that all said, let's talk about Ace. So Ace is a shooting simulator, as I mentioned. It effectively is modeling a lot of US PSA style shooting, and when they sell it on a subscription model, so it's like you pay for a whole year of using it, then it's like 19 bucks a month, and you have to have a MetaQuest VR thing. So when this company reached out to me, and they did give me the controller and access to the game and all that kind of stuff, so fair, disclaimer, all that good stuff. When they reached out to me, they actually are making these controllers in Dallas, Texas, and these controllers are actually pretty cool. They weigh about 24 ounces because they actually have weights in them to approximate the weight and feel of an actual, polymer pistol. It's not quite as top heavy as a polymer pistol with a steel slide, but it is about 24-ish ounces. With the Quest 3 controller, it probably bumps it up another, 3 or 4 ounces. So it's probably 27, 28 ounces, but the balance is decidedly, back towards the grip, which is good if you're used to neutrally balanced guns. If you're used to a forward muzzle heavy, polymer striker deal, then you can hang a light on it and make it heavier or whatever. Oh, I've got a Streamlight right here. Check it out. Streamlight, let's see if that's gonna work. Oh yeah, look at that. So now it's a tactical VR controller. But the VR controller is very good. The ergonomics are very SIG P320-esque, so it feels like a real gun. And they've actually, so immediately a lot of you are like, well, what's the trigger like? The trigger on this gun is about 4 pounds on my Lyman digital trigger scale. And what's interesting is you put the controller in this kind of cradle where it's actually backwards facing, but they've developed so it has a defined wall and then a break. So you end up like, you can row straight through it, but the trigger throw is probably a little bit shorter than a real SIG 320. It's a little bit longer than like a 1911. It's kind of a good middle ground. So it actually feels like a real controller, and that when you do mag changes, you actually do have a button to press on the side, and then you have to hit the bottom of the controller. So I've had access to this game since the beginning of December. The holidays being the crush that it is, I've only probably logged in about a dozen or so times. But I can definitely see during the winter months continuing to use this with the MetaQuest 3 that I ended up buying. Right out of the gate, this simulator is not gonna be for everybody, because the MetaQuest 3, if you were to buy the cheap ones, like 500 bucks, if you were to buy this thing, it's like 250-ish bucks or whatever to get started on it, and then you get access to the app. And now the app is very much still in development. It's gonna have ongoing support. It seems like every week or every other week they're releasing new features, new stages. So it is something that is not necessarily going to get stale, because as you sort of master the drills, if you can, then they'll have access to all new ones. One thing that's kind of interesting is they've sort of recreated the Terran tactical range that you see like Keanu Reeves from the John Wick 2 training video in. They've got that there. They've got some skill building type apps where you can work on your presentation and site acquisition. They've got some little mini games where like zombies and moving targets and stuff like that are concerned. So it's a pretty robust game. Now let's talk about the actual applicability That's an interesting Scrabble word. Let's talk about how applicable the experience is with VR to real shooting, and like what can you really learn. So those of you who are familiar with the channel know that I have been a competitive shooter for at least the past 10, I guess, yeah, it's 10 plus years, whatever the number is. So I'm kind of operating at a different speed from what many people might be coming, because everybody, this game is going to meet you where you are at. But what I found immediately in my shooting was two things were very applicable. There is no recoil when you shoot this gun. In theory, you should be able to stack itty bitty holes on any shot at any distance. But what I found is that I wasn't doing that. I was finding that there was shot separation just like a real gun, but there's no actual recoil in your hand. So why is that? What I learned is how I had to secure the controller in my strong hand, how I had to seat it properly, how I had to adjust my grip from my support hand. I'm pretty much using the exact same grip pressure I use in live fire in order to stabilize the gun, where I can get very, very close together pairs when I'm doing hammered pair type stuff. The other thing that this game taught me, and this isn't necessarily true to life because there is a slight like processing delay, and I don't think many people will probably experience this, but in transition, I like to drag the gun onto transition. I don't necessarily stop it cleanly, but I kind of like slow it down and kind of drag through the zone that I'm trying to hit at. And I have reasonably good success in that, but when you do it in this game, it absolutely punishes you. Like Smoke and Hope is a classifier stage that I can actually shoot faster live than I can in this game, because I have to kind of like actually come to a complete stop versus my kind of like painting, drawing past the target that I'm trying to hit. So that was actually a very beneficial thing for me to be realizing, because I was able to very quickly bring that into my real shooting, and in the matches that I shot, basically go 1-for-1 on steel all the way around. So that was a very eye-opening benefit that I was able to get at without spending a ton of ammo shooting at small, distant targets. So those are just two of the things that I've experienced so far. Now let's talk about kind of the rest of the features in the game, because I think that stuff's probably gonna be interesting to you guys. Because this is a controller loosely modeled around kind of like it's a Springfield Echelon, and a P320 sort of had a baby, is the way that it sort of looks. It doesn't fit in any holsters. Really, the cradle that holds the controller is going to keep you from getting it into your holster. So what ends up happening is you start with a low ready. The sight acquisition on these guns is pretty much the same as a real gun, and they have a few guns modeled that you can mess with. They have a Staccato P, a Staccato C2 with a dot on it, the P320-ish gun, and they even have an open gun. You will fatigue your grip muscles like you would shooting real guns on a real range. It's absolutely wild, but it's true. The other thing is, if you're doing transitions properly, you're going to end up driving the gun through your legs. So your core and low back and your quads are going to burn just like you were standing on a real range shooting. So definitely does reward good technique, and I'm using my real pistol techniques when I play the game. So there already is a user base of some high level dudes, and if you're ready to sign on the dotted line, as I was editing this, they actually gave me a code that you can use to get 1 more month of ACE. If you use code HUMM, you can get an extra month with your initial purchase. I'll put a link down in the comment section to all of the stuff that you need, so check that out. They've got a bunch of different of the US PSA classifiers under very similar names with the same kind of stipulations. They have a ranking system of like a bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and I think it's like diamond after that. Gold is kind of like the standard of, you know, good shooting or whatever. Platinum is pretty tough to get at, and I have gotten nowhere close to getting a diamond. So like whatever their ACE score is based around, it's kind of like hit factor or whatever, where it's points divided by time. But 130 is where platinum starts, and I've been able to platinum a bunch of different drills. Now some of them I can't split the trigger fast enough. I can't get the gun up fast enough. It's just very difficult to get at the sort of like diamond level, so I don't have any of those. So they have this leaderboard feature where you can actually go see and talk trash to your buddies who might be in game. There is a microphone on the Quest headset that's actually very good, so you can do voice comms. So they do support multiplayer functionality, which there's friends list, and as of recording this, I have 2 or 3 friends, and I've never played with them because I'm a loser. The reality of that is I just pop on whenever I can. It's usually at weird times, and nobody else is online. And honestly, I don't even know, haven't even bothered trying to figure out how to shoot with other people. There is this little ecosystem that they have built up of brass and lead. Lead is used to purchase attempts of like leaderboard attempts that will stick, like the all-time best scores or whatever are purchased with lead. They sort of have a rolling leaderboard that for just the free version of shooting it where it doesn't cost lead. The brass you earn through scoring well, and you can buy, you know, different guns. They've got all sorts of different optics. They've got like an RMR type optic. They've got like a Delta Point Pro, both the circle and the triangle dot. They've got the Holosun ACSS type reticle on that, so you can check it out. They've added a couple more dots. They've added the SRO, the Romeo 3 Max, or something very similar to it, and they've added the Shield RMSX type sights to the game. The experience shooting dots is pretty close, like the way the dot moves, lifts, and recovers, like it's straight up and down, and that's really not what most people are experiencing. They're probably experiencing slightly up and right, slightly down and left as far as how the dot moves. So this gives you the benefit of the dot going straight up and down, but your bad trigger pulls and your bad grip will basically allow the trigger to deviate to the left. The experience shooting irons is very much like shooting a good set of Dawson Precision irons, which is what comes on the Staccato P, and it's very similar to that. I actually quite like shooting the irons. It's got a green fiber pipe on it. I'm not sure if you can change it to red or not. There are stages that have movement, and my rooms that I play indoors, basically there is not enough space to move, so you end up basically looking where you want to go, then using the joystick to kind of teleport there. Eventually, I'm going to take it outside and scare the neighbors with my crazy space gun, playing my AI game in the backyard, just to see what the moving stages are kind of like. It never occurred to me, and I'm always playing at weird hours. One thing about the MetaQuest 3 is for it to kind of show you where the gun is in space, the cameras need to be able to see the gun. So you can't be a sweaty gamer in a dark room like this and just, you know, hope that it's going to see the gun. Like, you need to be in a well-lit space to get the most out of the headset, and that's a limitation of the VR and the cameras that they use, not so much the app. Some of the big training benefits that I see beyond just the absolute fundamental level that we already discussed is that this gives you the opportunity to shoot long range. It gives you the opportunity to attempt activator sequences. There's a number of different stages which have, you know, activators with moving targets and stuff like that, so you can actually work on that. But at the same time, the feel and look of being able to shoot a moving target is very close to real life, to the point where I'm not too upset that my score is not as good as I know I could do in real life. I also don't have to lug a popper out of the shed or a swinger out of the shed and lug it all back when I'm done. So that's very, very convenient, and I really appreciate that about the game. In the training module, there is a drill where they encourage you to present the gun and get 2 shots on a target within a stipulated time frame. So what that's doing is actually developing your index, where you're bringing the gun from low ready to the first 2 shots, and that's actually really cool because it is developing a real life index. Like, I'm telling you, when you're behind the controller and looking through the simulated gun, it is exactly the same as the experience of my real, you know, 2011 style guns. I have a C2, and the C2 in the game, like being behind it, is exactly the same. Recoil is different. The guns don't recoil any differently as far as the, you know, non-compensated guns are concerned. And like the P shoots, you know, just the same as the C2, which isn't true in real life, but it is in the game, and that's probably okay. One little tip to get kind of the most out of the simulated trigger is that there is a setting that you need to adjust every time you shoot the gun. There is going to be a new distance of trigger travel of getting to the wall, and then what the break is. So you have to set the sensitivity each time you log in, and that's because it's, you know, it's set by spring tension. It takes like 2 seconds to do, and it's slightly different each time you do it. For me, the wall can range between about 0.15 to 0.18 or so, depending on how the controller gets seated in here. One thing that's amusing is using the controller, you can actually press check and rack rounds out of the gun in the game, and that's done through manipulating the joystick. One thing that I've run into with this is that they won't let you reload too fast. So if you try and reload real fast and just get back on it, then the gun won't work properly, and you have to kind of cycle the slide manually to get it to work. That's kind of irritating because I try and move my hands really fast, but at the same time, it's closer to my real life reload speed. Like, I'm trying to simulate reloads that would be like probably a 0.6. I can't do that in real life. On my reload time, I'm not a fast reloader. It's only like a 1.1 to a 1.2 if I'm lucky. And that's roughly what it takes to get this gun back into action. So given the price tag of what they're charging for this, this is a very expensive thing. It's not gonna be for everybody, but if you do have the means to get a MetaQuest 3, or you've already got one and you can swing the cost of this, realistically, this is the cost of a case of 9mm ammo for a year's worth of use. and I'm telling you, I've gotten way more. I don't know what my round count is. There's a bucket in the shed that tells you how many rounds you fired and how much money you've saved, I think using about $300 per case price. You will get way more training out of this thing than any other training aid that I've tried. Now, I've tried the Mantis X, I've tried the laser systems, I've tried Cool Fire Trainer. All of those are good for like a very limited slice of what you're trying to get at, but the greater context of pistol shooting and practical accuracy, this game does something that no other training tool that I'm aware of does, and it's pretty fun. Ace VR is pretty cool, but if you want to kind of take your grip to the next level, I've made this video, which is very popular. It is basically examining grip at the deepest level with some of the best shooters alive. So if you're going to get this fancy gun, if you watch this video, you'll have a better idea on how you need to be gripping it.